And we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and I'm your only host tonight, Nate. I think Tony's at work. I'm joined today by Brett Eichenberger. Brett, I just heard of you from a friend of ours, a mutual friend, and I found out that you live in Oregon. Is that correct? Are you also an Oregonian? Which is a lot of fun.
Oregonian. Yep.
Awesome, man. Yep. So, and then I also saw that you made a Bigfoot documentary this year as well. That's crazy. I'm an Oregonian that made a Bigfoot documentary this year too. So this is really neat. I had to reach out to you. I wanted to talk to you and get you on the show. Welcome. Brett, do you want to introduce yourself since this is the first time on the show? Do you want to tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brett Eichenberger, and I'm a filmmaker, of course, Oregonian as well. And yeah, we've done, myself, my production company, my cohorts have done a few feature films that are out there. Light of Mine is one. It's about a photographer who travels to Yellowstone before he goes blind. Another one called Pretty Broken, which is a dramedy about a young woman whose father goes missing in the Himalayas. And now our current film, which is called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And it is a documentary all about Bigfoot. And a lot of people say to me, well, how did you go from like making like scripted films with actors to Bigfoot? It's quite a departure. And the truth is that being an Oregonian, I've just always been fascinated with Bigfoot. My wife, Jill Remensnyder, who is also the producer on A Flash of Beauty and wrote Pretty Broken and produced Light of Mine, the other films, and who we work together in Resonance Productions, it's the name of our production company. But both her and I have had a fascination with Bigfoot ever since we were little kids. She grew up on the Oregon coast. I grew up here in the Portland area, and being around this amazing beauty and wonder in the state of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest in general, we've just always just kind of been intrigued by what this thing is, what it could be. And when the pandemic hit, we really kind of came together and thought, you know what, work has dried up. Let's do a Bigfoot documentary. We knew some folks, some prominent folks in the Bigfoot world. And so we set off to do a documentary, finish it in 6 months and put it out there. And a year and a half later, here we are.
Yeah.
We did it. Right, it took us a lot longer than we thought.
Mine took a lot shorter than I thought. It was really crazy. I thought it was going to take us a year and a half. Yeah. That's a good thing. This was our first time making a documentary, so we are real green with making any sort of movie. My partner, he's the one that's like talented with the videography. I'm the one that can't shut up. He's more like introverted and quiet, and I'm the extrovert. So we make a good team, which cool. So it was good. He's really talented. It turned out great. Dude, that's really neat, dude. I was going to ask you what part of Oregon you're in. You're near Portland?
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm just north of Portland. Yeah, I'm in a little I don't want to say crummy. I like this town. I'm in a little country town. I'm in Scappoose, if you know where that is.
Oh, of course. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You were like due north of me. Literally, like I could drive up over the West Hills and end up in Scappoose. I love the Scappoose Highway 30 St. Helens area. I know it well.
Yeah.
There's Bigfoot.
Gorgeous, man.
Yeah.
Is there really? Yeah. I like to think there is. Yeah. Dude, there's some wild country. Like you get like a little closer to like Deer Island and like near Vernonia. It gets real Rainier. Dude, it gets real wild up there.
I'll tell you a story. So an individual by the name of Henry Franzoni, I don't know if that name rings a bell or not, but Henry was very prominent in the Bigfoot world back in the late 90s. And Henry worked with Peter Byrne for a number of years. And he talks about that in the film. But, a little story that he was telling us when we were doing the interview up in Longview was he'd had all these Bigfoot experiences. And Henry's a fascinating guy. He's had many experiences, Bigfoot, UFOs and whatnot. And he was telling me that he had all these Bigfoot experiences and had seen them, doing multiple things like swimming in lakes and all kinds of crazy stuff. And one day his wife was vacuuming at their house on Deer Island in the middle of the afternoon, and she looked out the front window facing the front yard, backyard, whatever it was, but it was extensive property, and there was Bigfoot standing there watching her vacuum.
Wow.
And she calmly called to her husband and said, "Henry, there's Bigfoot out there." And she says, "So that's what they look like, huh?" Just like
That's
that.
wild, man.
So Deer Island, right by you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a friend. Shout out to my buddy Adam from Deborah Grits Red Pill. He bought a little homestead, bought some acres out there and just raising some animals. And yeah, Deer Island is fucking beautiful, dude. Beautiful
Yep.
land. Yeah,
It's
and
all
it's
beautiful.
pretty
Yeah.
remote, dude. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it takes a minute to get back there, and some backwoods and some some gnarly off the pavement kind of drives, and it's pretty out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could definitely see Bigfoot out here. I was thinking too. I mean, he might even jump in the Columbia and eat fish right out of the river. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, and that's another story that Henry was talking about. So Henry goes into in the film. We wanted to start off by talking about the Native American influence and correlation with Bigfoot, and they've got various names for them. Sabe is one of them. Um, in the Midwest they call them Satongas. Um, Sasquatch obviously is the most famous one. That comes from Canadian. Sorry about my lighting here. That comes from the Canadian natives, but Henry was telling me a story about telling us a story about how he got to know a lot of the tribes in the area because he was a conservationalist, and he worked with the tribes through the federal government. And what was really unique about that is they would let him in on stories that they wouldn't really even tell other tribes in the area. And they actually have, we're talking about some of the natives that live along the Columbia Gorge, all the way up to Umatilla and whatnot. They actually have video. I mean, like crystal clear videos, many, many, many videos of Bigfoot doing things in and around the area. One of which is one swimming across the Columbia River.
Wow.
And Henry's seen it, but it belongs to them. It belongs to their tribes, belongs to their longhouses. And these aren't things that they typically share with people for a variety of reasons, but it's out there.
It's interesting, man. I mean, I've been having these really interesting conversations with a lot of folks, a lot of different researchers and podcasters, and people in the community, and we've been trying to kind of narrow down what Bigfoot is. I mean, because there's different. I mean, I had some contacts with some of the really big uppity ups in the Bigfoot world. One in particular that I'm thinking of, and as soon as we floated the idea that we think that he might actually be psychic and interdimensional, they lost it. They were like, "No, we're not. We're not even going to talk to you guys anymore." And so there's like some really hardliners that like their feet are in the ground. They're like, "There's no way. He's flesh and blood. He's an ape." And then there's some other folks that are like, "Well, there's connection to high strangeness because like if you're looking at like places like Skinwalker Ranch, when people are seeing these orbs and UFOs, they'll also see some Bigfoot, some little Sasquatch and things like that." So to me, I'm not saying I know what he is, but I'm open-minded to the idea. And I was curious if you had what is your theory? What is like that? I mean, I know it probably changes day to day like me, but what do you think Bigfoot is?
Okay. Loaded question. This is a loaded
Yes.
question. Definitely. So we're working on a sequel right now. It's going to be out next summer. It covers all of this, called Paranormal Bigfoot. And what we
Ours
found
was Search for Psychic Sasquatch. That's a lot of fun.
I mean, here's the deal is that, there are a lot of really reputable Bigfoot researchers that are flesh and blood. And I totally understand where they're coming from, and I understand why they're coming from where they're coming from. But with that being said, the amount of eyewitness accounts to paranormal activities involving Bigfoot are too numerous to dismiss. And dismissing that is skewing the data, and it's not telling the truth. And the truth is that there is something else going on alongside Bigfoot. And it's not a coincidence. It's not that, every single time Bigfoot's around, there's going to be an orb or something like that. But, the folks that have seen these things in conjunctions, either prior to a sighting, during a sighting, or after a sighting, sometimes in a few minutes, sometimes in a day or two, there's something going on. And the thing about it is what our next documentary is trying to do. What we're trying to do is come up with a scientific explanation as to what's happening. Because if somebody's seeing something they can't explain, it's because science hasn't caught up yet. And there's a lot of people out there, skeptics and whatnot, that say, "Oh yeah, well that's an easy excuse to make," but it's the truth. And we can't sit here. I realize it's 2022 and whatnot. We've got incredible technology, but we can't claim that we know everything. The Nobel Prize was awarded 2 days ago to physicists who have proven that spooky action is real. And spooky action is basically two molecules that can be entangled regardless of whether they're next to each other or across the solar system from each other. And if you wiggle this one, the other one reacts. And for a long time, quantum mechanics had a hard time explaining how this could happen, and if in fact it was real. And these guys have proven that it's real, and they won the Nobel Prize in physics for it. So going back to that, we're trying to explain a lot of how some of this spooky action thing, and when you get down to the atomic level and nuclear level, when somebody sees an orb, or when somebody sees a Bigfoot cloak and go invisible, there is a reason why that is happening. We don't know how or why it's happening, but Google vampire squids, and you'll see they have like these LED lights. They literally look like something that like you'd see like at a toy store in Japan. They got like rainbow colored LED lights when they're swimming across the ocean. Well, you're talking about an animal that's manufacturing its own light, and people are questioning whether or not Bigfoot can create orbs, and or cloak.
That's fascinating. I like that idea. I haven't heard that Bigfoot was creating the orbs before. That's a fascinating idea. I like that a lot. Yes, I 100% agree with you. I mean, to me, I think I've tried to think of every single possibility there is, and I think maybe he's maybe a more advanced humanoid than us. He might have more psychic abilities than us, things that like we probably still have that are inherent in us that just are inert right now. Like we can't use them, or we just don't know how,
Yeah.
And I think that like, as far as cloaking goes, I mean, there's our vision is so limited. Our vision is so limited with like the spectrums that we can pick up and the frequencies that we can hear, and all these things. Like there literally could be one right next to me, and if he doesn't want me to see him, I can't see him. That's the way I think it is. And I've had some really great talks with some eyewitnesses that have had a really awesome photo. I'll send it to you after this. That you can literally see a Bigfoot's body, but it's like see-through and wavy. Like he literally, this Bigfoot cloaked in front of him, and he could just kind of see some weird movement, and he took a picture of it. It's wild, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's totally possible. Like you said, like some of those squid, they instantly blend into their background.
Yeah.
It's insane. Some of those, like the cuttlefish or whatever. Yeah, it's instantaneous. Yep. And it's like, why can't something do that out here? Why is that such a hard concept for people to grasp? And I don't know.
I don't understand it. I think that, there's a variety of reasons behind it. And one of the things that we did differently in A Flash of Beauty is we sat down, we actually sought out one of the more accomplished psychologists in the United States. And, this guy's Yale educated, had no fear talking to us. We flew all the way out to Florida, had no problem talking about Bigfoot. And, part of what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about the breakdown of what happens when somebody has this kind of experience. How do they feel? What is the brain doing when it's seeing something that it thinks it doesn't exist? And one of the biggest components to all of this is fear. And, the idea that there's something out there that's an apex predator that's essentially superhuman, because you think gorillas chimpanzees are 10 times stronger than a human being.
They can
So
rip
what?
your arm off your
Yeah,
body.
yeah, and that's a chimpanzee, and they're like what,
Yeah.
5'2"? So what's a Bigfoot? 20 times, 30 times stronger than a human being. Um, Even though there's instances of humans having super strength in times of need, but that's a different topic and different discussion. But the underlying factor is fear, and it's easy for people to shut something off than to start accepting its reality because maybe they love the outdoors. Maybe they don't want to think that there's a 10-foot tall invisible beast tracking them. And part of what we're trying to get out there is that these things are not all monsters. I say not all monsters. Some of them are can be aggressive. There's missing persons cases that are unexplained, that are very odd. I'm not saying that Bigfoot are taking people. I don't know if it's Bigfoot, UFOs, or any number of things, but the majority of them out there, based on the eyewitness accounts and the individuals that we've interviewed who have had ongoing interactions with them, some of these people for 50 or 60 years, say that these things they're kind, they're loving, they're curious, they're extremely shy, which is obvious, and they actually want to protect humanity. So going back to your original question of what are they, man, it's really hard to say. Ron Moorhead would
Yeah.
say that they might be alien human hybrids. They might be the original humans,
Yeah.
and
They
human
could be the
beings.
original humanoids. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that. And I think that would make sense to a certain extent. We could be the product of aliens and Bigfoots.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
That's
totally
just one
possible that we
possibility.
are the Adamu. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely explored that idea. And as far as him being aggressive at times, like I would just maybe more say territorial, because that's what I
Mhm.
get a lot of times, and protective of their clan and things like that. That's what I get from a lot of eyewitness accounts that have actually had like psychic communication, and like I can't remember the word they call that, but it's like universal speaking or something like that, where they're having like an actual exchange mentally, and they can like telepathically communicate. And he was just explaining really that is like the only time, like if you're going to hunt for Bigfoot, he was basically saying, he's like, just go and ask for permission first, like let all your intentions be known, and go in there with like the right attitude. And like he says, if you're haughty, if you're kind of like a jackass, he goes, good luck. He's like, they're never going to
Yeah.
show themselves to you. He says you just have to be in there with the right attitude and the right mindset, and then just, he says, ask for permission before you walk in there. And I agree, man. And I had a gun on my hip just in case there was mountain lions, and he says that's why I didn't see a Sasquatch, and that's totally possible.
It's totally
But
it's
yeah,
completely possible, and we've heard stories about that where people will have some of this mind speak, and the mind speak will say, "Why do you have a gun? What do you need a gun for?"
yeah,
So they're well aware of what they are. I mean, I can't imagine that there's been like, let me rephrase that. I can only imagine there's been multiple, Bigfoot beings that have witnessed hunting, that have watched men take down deers, that they understand what the functionality of a gun is. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of actually more of a common thing where people will, they'll either hear that mind speak, or they won't be able to move any further in the forest. It's almost like
yeah.
there's this
I've heard that
paralysis.
too. If he doesn't want you to go any further, like that's actually Scott. We have a mutual friend named Scott,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And Scott was saying, he's like, if you ask permission, he goes, he'll make it clear. And I think that's really fascinating too. I talked to another really awesome guy. His name is Sean Hibbler. We
Mhm.
were talking, and he was saying that on his friend's property out in Texas, there's Bigfoots and a family of them. And he says that you can't go any further than this one area. And then his friend was like, "Go ahead and try. Yeah,
Yeah.
try to go further than that."
Yeah.
And he walked there, and he couldn't. And he was like, okay, I don't know why, but I literally can't walk any further than this. That was
It's
so
wild.
fascinating. Yeah,
It's
it's like,
wild.
if they don't want you there, you're not allowed there. Like,
Yeah.
don't try to force it.
Yeah. But any normal male, you know, father who's protective of his wife and his family,
Yep.
or family, whatever the situation may be. But if any individual, doesn't matter who you are, what your intentions are, if you walk into somebody's house, guess who you're going to meet? You're going to meet dad, husband, the father, whoever is the person in charge. Maybe it's going to be mom. Doesn't matter. It's just you are not going to be welcomed unless you are invited into somebody's home. So if you just walk in there and just say, "Oh yeah, I'm just here for a drink of water," or whatever. No, there's going to be hell to pay. It doesn't matter because nobody knows what your intentions are. It's no different. They're no different at all. You wander into their living room in the forest, they're going to make it known that you're not wanted.
Yeah.
It's got to
Yeah,
be on their terms.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and I was just going to second what you said as far as like what I've heard for the most part, the Bigfoots are kind and they are peaceful, which is what I've heard. And I have heard of some aggressive types. I've heard of some ones that are pretty mean. And that's just like human beings, there's some a-holes,
Big time.
And one fascinating thing that you mentioned too there was like the missing 411, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a good friend, Jim. He was part of our documentary as well. He was saying if you overlay, so the missing 411 cases, if you look at a map and you overlay the map there, and then on top of that, you put the underground cave systems, you lay that down on the map, there's a lot of correlation, and then even more correlation when you put on Bigfoot sightings. And it's crazy. There's so much overlap. It's really nuts. So, and like you said, I don't know if it's Bigfoot taking people. I don't know if, I kind of, any day I might change my mind about the shape or scope of this planet or whatever realm or simulation we're in. But I really like the hollow earth theory. And I think there's definitely some underground, some of those cave systems, there might be full on cities. There might be some beautiful, awesome, high technology, some interesting stuff down there, some cool, full on civilizations down there. And maybe people just check it out and like, I'm staying. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's entirely true. It's been rumored for, I don't know, 100 years or something crazy that Mount Shasta is the home of the Luminarians, and there's a city underneath it. And I think we've all, in this realm, we've all probably heard the stories about Antarctica and the bases in the underground subterranean cities that are there. So, with all of the caves that we have, for instance, the West Hills that divide you and I, there's a lava tube underneath it here in the Portland area, a massive lava tube. There's lava tubes all over Oregon, and some of them go tens of miles.
That's near Bend, right? Those lava tubes. Yeah, man, that was the most eerie thing. I was out camping like in the middle of nowhere, and I knew that those lava caves were nearby, and it was so odd because I like picked up a rock and like a big old thing, and I was moving it, and the ground just sounded hollow under my feet. It was absolutely bizarre. I thought it was the freakiest thing. And thinking about it now, I think my wife even had brought that up. Like there were the lava caves. We might have been like right above some big caverns and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
And we have, and one of the more famous examples, of course, is Ape Cave up near Mount St. Helens. And how did it get its name? Because up there near Ape Cave, Ape Canyon is the famous Bigfoot shack attack. Where there were 4 or 5 loggers up there in, I think it was in the 1920s or 1930s, that woke up in the middle of the night to apes throwing rocks at their cabins, and hence the name Ape Canyon, Ape Cave. And Ape Cave, if you're in this area, I highly recommend folks out there go and check it out because it's really cool, and it's just a long, like maybe mile-long lava tube. It's amazing.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I should check that out. I am in the area.
Yeah, no, you really do. You really got to check it out.
So where did you guys film the majority of your documentary? Did you guys go and do like an open hunt, or was it mostly like interviews or a little bit of both?
So what we did is we took a look at, a ton of different Bigfoot documentaries that are out there. And, we wanted to do something that was a little bit different. And so we tried to identify blanks, I guess you could say, between what's been done on TV with Expedition Bigfoot and some of those other shows, and what the documentaries were. And so we felt like the chances of us coming across something out there were probably pretty slim, if we were to go out with hunting equipment. So what we did is we thought, let's go into the eyewitness accounts. Let's find some really credible people. Let's break down some stereotypes that some of the skeptics bring up, in their arguments. And let's talk about the emotional component, because I personally feel like the emotional component is a huge part of it. And you get a little bit of the emotional component with alien abductions, because you hear some of the hypnosis and the terror that those people are going through when they relive that moment. And you don't get that from the Bigfoot side. And so I really wanted to kind of get into the heads of some of the folks that had a sighting, because it's just having that sighting is extremely traumatic to a lot of people. Other people, it's a thing of beauty. And the thing is that when I say it's traumatic, it doesn't have to be an aggressive Bigfoot. It can just be a
Yeah.
Bigfoot standing there.
I mean, it's something outside of the norms, it's something that you never expected to see. And that could really freak someone out. I mean, that's just human beings in general. It's a fascinating thing that you're saying, but it's like you and I could both like go to the river and catch a fish or something. And I could have like just been in a bad mood and like the day sucks. And you might've had the time of your life. You caught a big fish. You're just happy to be outside. It's sunny. Yeah, so humans in general, I think, we're pretty different, and I think you manifest your reality, and so I think that something that could be like for like Scott, he had, I think it was sort of traumatic and scary a little bit, but like also he likes communicating with the Bigfoots and things like that, and then for some other people that might have been the scariest thing they've ever seen. Like I've talked to some folks that have had some cryptid experiences that like. I might be one of the only people they've ever told, because they are so embarrassed and freaked out and they don't want the ridicule. And they're like, yeah, I believe it because I saw it, but holy shit. It's fascinating.
No, you're exactly right. And Scott is a perfect example of somebody who's seen something that very few people have seen. He for those of you out there wondering, Scott saw a Bigfoot and a dogman at the same time. And I'll kind of leave it at that. But
I released the interview with him actually on Monday, and he was part of the documentary. So
awesome. Yeah. So I didn't know that, but I don't want to spoil things. So there's a teaser. And we're actually going to meet Scott finally in December. We'll be down in Marshall, Texas, the Bigfoot Film Festival. So there's a plug. So you guys, everybody come out to Marshall, Texas, December 9th and 10th. My light keeps changing. I've got a big monitor that's lighting me up and the screensaver keeps kicking on. So let me change that. I'm using my monitor as my light source for you techies out there. Let's see. It's supposed to start in 5 minutes. That's what's going on. Okay. All right. Problem solved.
Awesome.
Where were we? We were talking about Scott, Bigfoot Film.
Texas. You guys are getting together. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hotbed, man. A lot going on in Texas and Oklahoma. So you asked me where we went and filmed, and that's someplace we went, actually. We went to Oklahoma. And Oklahoma factors a little bit more in our sequel. We did go to Texas, but we didn't do any real filming in Texas. We just did one interview in Texas. With Farouk Muhammad, who you'll see in the film. He'll be in the second one as well. And then we went to Florida, kind of a quick trip to Florida. The majority of the film, takes place, of course, in the Pacific Northwest, which is obviously where the majority of the sightings occur. So we kind of concentrated on Oregon, Washington. Washington's the #1 state in the United States for Bigfoot sightings.
Fascinating.
So yeah, they're all up there. They're all up near. So you actually have a kind of the core of the Bigfoot sightings it's like Mount Hood National Forest area, north up to Mount St. Helens, Mount Adams. Mount Adams is like a
Hmm.
hotbed for anything and everything that's
Mount
mysterious.
Adams is where we're going next when we do. We're going to
Yeah.
do a UFO and a documentary. We're going to go to Mount Adams to investigate there. And we went to Bonnie Meadows.
Okay.
That's where we were. Yeah, I think what is that, southeast of Mount Hood? We were out there, or
Hmm.
just south of Mount Hood, and
Lots of activity. Bigfoot
yeah,
Highways in the hood. Uh,
yeah,
Great book by Joe Beelart. If you haven't read it yet, pick it up. The Oregon Bigfoot Highway, and it's basically from Portland, kind of Estacada area, and it kind of
yeah.
loops all the way down to Highway 22, I believe it is, near Detroit. So you folks not familiar with this geography can look that up on a map. We actually have a town called Detroit in Oregon. It's near a lake, and there's a massive amount of Bigfoot sightings in that area. There's some very strange missing persons reports in that area. There's a famous story that was on a show called Paranormal Witness about a sheriff who was actually hiking that area, and he looked over and there was one looking at him and it was mocking him. So every movement that the sheriff would do, it would mock.
I
And
like
then
this
it
Bigfoot
pursued.
already.
Yeah, I know. No, he's like, it's like he's got a
Yeah.
sense of humor, right? But not really. And then it chased the sheriff all the way down the hill to his car. So check out that episode of Paranormal Witness that occurred in that area. And then all the way up to Mount Rainier, which is where the first modern UFOs were
Yeah.
sighted. So it's
Yeah,
like
it was
nuts.
Mount Rainier, and they flew to Mount Adams, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They probably
that's
flew
cool.
into Mount Adams. You just
Yeah,
missed that part.
exactly.
Because I
Yeah,
think something lives there. It's got to, right?
dude, it's a beautiful spot. Me and my wife went there for our anniversary about 2 years ago. We went out to Mount Adams, and we went there during the summer and stayed in like a little cabin out there. It's one of the most beautiful places ever, man. And I guess
Gorgeous.
it's like a hot spot in the winter because they do like cross country skiing. There was no one there. We were there in like
Yeah.
July, and there was no one, and so it was just us. And it was the most like beautiful, pristine rivers. Like we found some awesome swim holes. Like went deep in the woods. Like it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing out there.
It's incredible. There's a place up there called Indian Heaven, which has an abundance of huckleberries. There's probably people out there going,
I
no, don't
like
give
it.
away our cool spots. Trout Lake, of course, East is out there, and East is, has got all kinds of, East Ranch has got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. We've been wanting to go out there, but we haven't been out there. We have gone up to Mount Adams a number of times to look for Bigfoot and whatnot. My wife Jill and I saw UFO up there. We went all the way up to essentially base camp, where you kind of, if you're climbing Mount Adams, you can actually drive all the way up there. You'd camp there, and then you'd climb the next day up to the summit. And we saw a red orb, kind of cruising through
Yeah,
the trees at dusk. And I ran and got my camera, and poof, it was gone. How
of
convenient,
course.
you
Yeah,
know? So it's
yeah.
like,
I've got some
yeah.
footage of an orb that I saw out in Mitchell. We were out there
Oh, no
uh,
kidding.
seeing some friends out in Prineville, and we went out to the Painted Hills,
Hmm.
and we camped near the Painted Hills. And dude, we were so remote. There was zero light pollution. There probably wasn't another human for like 20 miles. And yeah,
Yeah.
we saw a big old orb come up off the mountain, and it was kind of messing with us. And
Yeah.
it was bizarre, man. We had a pretty interesting, like we felt a presence and an intelligence from it. It was really fascinating. And I was sitting there with a gun on my hip thinking about shooting it, and I was like, I don't think that's going to do anything. And
Hmm.
also, if it wants to come down here and kill me, it's going to. Like we thought about getting in the car and driving off, but there's one road and no one
Yeah.
else. Like, what are you going to do? So we just sat there and looked at it, and we're just like, all right.
A
But it
lot of
got pretty
cattle
damn
mutilations out
close.
there. Yeah. No. Yeah, it's a good thing you guys weren't cattle, because you would have been
Yeah.
mutilated probably. We did when we first started
You know
doing this
what's
Bigfoot
funny, man?
documentary.
It's a cowboy ranch. Is where we were
Is it?
camping. Yeah, it's an
Hmm.
old cowboy ranch. That is fascinating. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about the cattle mutilations. Maybe he was out there looking for a cow.
There's
Yeah.
there's there's something going on out there recently. The whole state of Oregon right now is a major paranormal hotspot. Um, But when we first started doing a flash video, this goes back to the summer of 2020. We wanted to do something that kind of covered Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, kind of the trifecta. And this was very early on, and we quickly realized it just needed to be Bigfoot. But one of the things that we did is we found a rancher out there. He was in the news, and he had had a cattle mutilation and wanted to know what was up. And so we contacted him and said, "Hey, we're doing this documentary. Can we come out and interview you and film you?" He's like, "Yeah, I guess so." So we went out there to this little town called Brothers, which is basically a closed down restaurant. That's it. And it's halfway between Burns and Bend. So it would have been like due south of Mitchell, almost due south, maybe 75 miles. But we went out, we met this ranch hand, we met the rancher, and we found they took us to where this skeleton slash corpse of this cow. And we did a little kind of investigation on it. And it was like 10 miles down this really rough, really dirty dirt road. And these two guys I mean, there's nobody for miles. Like, they're so far away from the police that if something happens, they don't call the police. They just take it, you know what I mean? It's like they're just that far away from people. And these rancher guys are like, "Oh yeah, we think Satan worshipers did it." And we're kind of like looking around going, "Really?" Like, Satan worshipers aren't really sophisticated enough to drive down this dusty, dirty, bumpy road in the middle of the night to mutilate a cow perfectly without leaving footprints or tire prints and spilling a drop of blood just so they can have a ceremony where everybody, eats the heart or something.
Yeah.
And what are they doing? What are they doing with the genitals that they cut out with laser precision?
That's the biggest thing. It's the laser precision, man. The cuts are crazy. I'm a chef. I know about that kind of shit. I've done butchery, a lot of butchery, and slaughtering animals myself. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
It makes no sense.
You're going to make a mess, no matter what.
There's
I'm
no
a
question
professional,
about it.
and you're going to leave a big mess.
The other thing, too, is that, there's probably a lot of people out there that probably haven't spent much time on a farm, maybe people who have, but it's not all that easy to just grab a cow and kill it. You just don't go out and mutilate a cow. It's a lot more difficult than that. The biggest thing that stuck out to me about that investigation, I mean, there's people out there that are like, "Oh, it was birds." I mean, they come up with these cockamamie ideas, but the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the simple fact is that nature is hungry. Nature is starving. It doesn't matter what it is, a badger, a coyote, a turkey vulture, a hawk. There are so many scavengers out there that want to eat, man. And when there's a cow sitting there dying, they want to chow down. They don't care. They're not fussy. They want to eat. That's good beef, right? Well, not a single animal had touched it. Why not? When you're starving, you don't refuse food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just the way that nature works. Those are the fundamentals
what do they
of
know
nature.
that we don't know, man? That's really fascinating.
Exactly.
I've talked to certain folks, and as far as UFOs go and things like that, like whatever they are, they have some sort of like, I don't want to say like radiation, but they do. They have some sort of like form of like radiation and energy that is just, I don't think it's meant to be harmful to us, but I just think it is. And I think if you come in too close a contact with that stuff, it really messes you up. And probably those scavengers sense whatever that is, and they're not touching it.
So when the ranch hand found the cow, he thinks it was probably a day or two after it had been mutilated. He got down and inspected the cow, and within minutes, he was sick to his stomach. And for the next 3 days, he was vomiting.
That's fascinating, man. I wonder, I'm sure people have done this before, but has anybody taken like a Geiger meter out to like mutilated animals and check them for like some form of radiation?
Yes, I think so. And I want to say that they even did that on one of the first seasons of Skinwalker Ranch. We took an EMF reader out there. We didn't pick up anything because by the time we got out there, it had been like 4 or 5 months. It'd been quite a while.
Yeah.
So we didn't, there was nothing that we picked up. But I will say this much. When we got out there after that long drive, there's this corpse, these bones just kind of laying there, and it's kind of off to the side. And the cattle, there's a herd of cattle maybe 50, 60 strong that wouldn't go anywhere near it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like they wouldn't go anywhere near it. And that had been common. I mean, throughout the entire time that that cattle had kind of been corralled there. I mean, they were free to roam, but they, that's where their water was and stuff like that. They wouldn't go anywhere near this thing. And so you like immediately when you see it, when you kind of go around the bend and you see these bones, it's bones with, fur and stuff. It's mostly decomposed. You get the creepiest feeling. You just kind of like know in your mind, like, and that kind of makes me wonder too. Do animals just have a sense that there's something off? Do they feel it? So many birds, for instance, have magnetic frequencies in their head. That's how they
Yeah.
know how to go true north and stuff. Do they feel? Are they picking up on like a magnetic resonance from this thing to
I
just?
mean, it goes back to us being animals too, and I think that we have all of those same abilities that
Yeah,
we've domesticated ourselves in these like comfy plaster and wood houses, and we're surrounded by EMF radiation, all that. Like we're looking into seer stones right now and getting
yeah.
radiation blasted into our eyeballs, and things like that, and it just blocks all of our natural psychic abilities, things like that.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And it also goes back to, the farmer when he said, it must be Satanists. That's a heck of a lot easier for him to like swallow than, oh, maybe there's a UFO that from like unknown origins came to my yard and mutilated my cow. That's a fascinating thing. Like, that's a lot to live with, like, is it going to do
It-
it again? Is it going to do it to me? Like, where'd it go? Is
yeah.
it around here still? Like,
Well, yeah, and there's a psychology to it too, because again, it's like this guy needs to rationalize this because he's a
yep.
father. He was a father of, I think, 5 children. Okay. So, and it's his job to protect his wife, protect his children. It always comes back to, in my opinion, the kind of the primal instincts. It's like he's the guy that's going to need to just make sure everybody stays safe. And any number of us, doesn't matter who we are, male, female, whatever, we're going to protect the ones that we love. Pets, anything that we care about, we're going to protect it. So if he rationalizes that it's Satanist, then for him it becomes a one-time only kind of a thing. It was a random occurrence. But if he starts thinking that it's UFOs and stuff, he knows that those things can come and go anytime that they want to and get him. And here's something that's fascinating. In fact, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. So part of the research that we did during this period of this concoction of these documentaries was we read this book called The 39th Parallel by oh, his name escapes me right now, but he's done some major books. He did a book called 21, I think, that was made into a movie, a bunch of other books. But the 39th Parallel talks about this researcher that figured out that there was UFOs activity from essentially Santa Cruz to Virginia Beach, and that's the 39th Parallel. And there was weird stuff
Interesting.
happening all along the United States. And there's a famous base, Dulce, New Mexico, is on the 39th Parallel, so on and so forth. And so we were doing a lot of work in Central Oregon, near Eugene, Oregon, and in this little town called Cottage Grove. There's a bunch of Bigfoot activity going on down there. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if we get the same. There goes my light. I'm in the dark. I said I'm gonna draw a line and see if like there's any correlation between this Bigfoot activity and this cattle mutilation, just for a hoot, right? And so, because it's all kind of taking place at the same time, we're doing filming in both places, and I drew a line on a map, and it was perfectly straight. So I don't know if that's a power line or what the situation was, but I could have gone from this high energy Bigfoot area and walked a straight line and essentially ended up at that cattle mutilation.
That's super fascinating. We have a comment here from one of the listeners. He says there's an interview with William Cooper from probably the late 90s where he talked about radiation and cow mutilations. He also got into a fake human made staged alien invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that is probably how aliens will be presented to us. Yeah, so that is fascinating. And when you were talking earlier and saying things like, oh man, sorry, I forgot. When you were talking earlier about people having bad experiences with alien abductions and things like that, I honestly think that the majority of people that are getting abducted by aliens aren't necessarily getting abducted by aliens. And I think that there is like he's saying, there's a lot of government things going on. Like, I think a lot of those crafts that we see in the sky are human made. And I think a lot of the invasions sorry, not invasions, but, yeah, I think a lot of that is government that comes and grabs folks and does experiments on people. Because I honestly don't think that there's any connection really between these orbs and the UFOs that people are saying. Like, I think these orbs are something completely different. And I think that it gets co-opted a lot by the government, and they try to explain what these things are to us, but I don't even think they know the answers. I think a lot of times they don't know what the heck they're talking about.
It's deeper. I think it's very, very, very layered. And, there's cryptids and stuff out there that people aren't talking about. Dogman is quickly becoming more and more popular, but there's other cryptids out there that I think that, the government's aware of. People are seeing all kinds of crazy things. There's a segment in A Flash of Beauty that talks about the government's knowledge of Bigfoot. And it took us about 5 or 6 months to get an eyewitness on camera, albeit we had to change his voice and his name and put him in black, which I don't really like doing. So that was kind of a tough one, but that was the only way he would agree to go on camera. And he's former Army intelligence. And what we didn't get into about his story was when he was a little kid up at Mount Adams, he was 13 years old and he had a face-to-face with a mother and a juvenile. And she showed her teeth and all kinds of stuff. But years later, he was recruited in the Army to be part of this Army intelligence. They knew he had a Bigfoot sighting, so they brought him in, and he was able to read some of the after action reports. He wasn't out in the field with them, but he found out that there's an elite group of snipers that are out there taking out problem animals, which in this case were Bigfoots, that were getting too comfortable with people.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. I've actually had a theory that I've probably said way too many times on this podcast that started my kind of my Bigfoot journey, talking to people about Bigfoot. Me and the wife got married, and we did our honeymoon backpacking from the Oregon coast all the way to we went through Oregon and into Idaho and Washington. Wow. There's my baby. My baby's knocking on the door. So if you hear him talking, that's him. And we went to we went through up to Montana and Wyoming, and we went through Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. And we had a talk with one of the park rangers, and they were basically explaining that almost every single animal they had was chipped, right? Like basically every single one. And if you accidentally hit a deer, that's $10,000. If a bear is like mauling your wife and you have to shoot it, that's $10,000. Like there's no ands, ifs, or buts. They just charge you. And so in my head, I just had this like theory that came to me, and I think I talked this through with a couple folks, and this is how I came to it. People, longtime listeners, probably know the story better than me, but I was thinking, I was like, what if every single one of these Bigfoots is chipped? And they actually have, and that's explaining why, because I've heard like reports of like hunters and blinds shooting a Bigfoot, and by the time they get down to the ground, the body's gone, and then they get visited by a man in black. Yeah. They're like, you didn't see a thing. And so like you're talking about those military that are like taking care of problem animals and trying to cover up any like making sure there's no witnesses, making sure nobody saw anything. Like that was my idea, that maybe there's like a group of like government or some form of like, secret service that is just like watching cryptids. And that's a fascinating concept, man.
Yeah. And Rich Germeau in our film talks about this. And Rich Jameau's former military is a police officer that had a sighting on duty in broad daylight, and which flipped his world upside down because he was a non-believer in pretty much anything. And all of a sudden, he sees a Bigfoot in broad daylight, like a few hundred yards from a beach full of people, on a summer afternoon. So he started thinking about all kinds of different things and so on and so forth. But he makes a great point. He says if there's an apex humanoid predator in North America, the U.S. government knows about it. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. And
None of us have
through
any form of privacy. They know everything we're doing. They have
they know
satellites,
everything we're doing.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree,
Hi,
man.
Uncle Sam. They're watching this podcast right
Yeah.
now. They're longtime listener, first time callers. They they want to know what we know. They're probably sitting here going, "These guys are amateurs. They don't even know the half
Yeah.
of it."
They were laughing at us,
But
like, dummy.
if Bigfoot and Sasquatches have there's in my mind there's some sort of an electrical component to these things, and you can kind of see that through how they're able to they shapeshift, they cloak, and their eyes glow. And I've personally seen eye shine. I've
Yeah.
actually seen it with my own eyes. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And my wife is my witness, and Michael Ferry, our DP on A Flash of Beauty, was there with us. This is after we finished the production of the film, and we've seen the eye shine. And so part of the theory and stuff that we get into, again, like I don't want to get too scientific, but it kind of comes down to a nuclear level of being able to manipulate atoms and stuff like that, and having control of those somehow in their body. It's like a cold fusion kind of a thing. But the point is that if they have that kind of power, electrical power, then there's a satellite that sees that. They see those signatures. You know what I mean? Because the U.S. Defense Department has the ability to see electromagnetic pulses for very good reason across North America. Because terrorists could dirty bombs that have electromagnetic components to them, so on and so forth. So it is for the security of the people of the United States. But however, on that flip side, there would be things that would give off signatures that they would be able to track. And I think that, everybody knows, it's pretty common knowledge that satellites can read license plates from space. So of course they're going to be able to see a 10 to 12 foot, apex predator hominoid.
I'd love to be one of those guys with one of those cameras.
I know.
Just,
Could you
yeah.
imagine? Hey, let's go over here and see what's going on at Mount Rainier, sitting in their
Crazy.
cave in Colorado or whatever it is.
And their dumps and their bunkers down there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
bag of Cheetos, just watching the Bigfoot family. What are they up to today? But the cool thing about that is, if you live in caves, nobody's looking at you. If you have the ability to hide under a cloak, then you can hide and evade them. So if they are tracking them that manner, they're only tracking them occasionally.
Yeah.
So I think they can still outsmart our best technology.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's funny. I think all of these things can outsmart our technology, because I think that it's of something else, whatever it is. It's something that is like, that's why I go back to the ultra terrestrial or the interdimensional kind of aspects to this, because it seems like they can go in and out of our reality, at will, which is fascinating, man. And it's a wild one, man. It's a wild one, and I love it. I think it's great.
I know. The theories and the ideas and the eyewitness accounts could go on the rest of the night. There's no question about it.
Well, Brett, I didn't want to keep you longer than an hour. I think this was a great talk. We should definitely do it again. And man, you're so close. We should grab a beer or a taco or something like that one of these days.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, absolutely, Nate. I really appreciate you having me on the show tonight. And if anybody out there hasn't seen A Flash of Beauty yet, Amazon.com. It's now on Tubi. If you can put up with the commercials, I recommend you actually watching it without commercial interruptions, but that's just me. iTunes, Vudu, any you can kind of find it anywhere. So take a look at the
That's
film.
awesome, man. Yeah, send me a
Follow us
link
on
to it,
Facebook.
and yeah, send us a link. We just had another comment. He says, "Does Brett have a website? Do you have a website that you want to send people to,
For the
or
film,
just the
yeah,
Facebook?" Or
yeah, follow us on Facebook. A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed on Facebook. Our website is bigfootdoc.com, DOC. Yeah, and you can reach us through there. And if you guys send us private message or whatever, either myself or Jill will answer those messages. We love hearing from people. We love hearing stories. Don't be shy. Reach out and say hi.
awesome, man. Well, this was a lot of fun, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Later.